Welcome to First Responder Friday. My name is Conrad Weaver. I'm your host for the program today. I'm also the producer and director of the documentary film PTSD 911, the story we are working on right now, raising funds to tell the story of first responders who are dealing with post-traumatic stress. And thank you for watching the program today. Thank you for being involved. This is actually a pre-recorded program, so it's not live, but we'll have some people in the comments below. So if you have questions to pitch, you can put those questions in the comments, and we'll try to field those to the appropriate parties as we go along. But thank you for joining us today. And we have two very special guests with us today, and I'll get to them in just a moment. But first, if you are a fan of the work that we're trying to do and the project that we're working on, I encourage you to go to our Indiegogo page and make a contribution. And the numbers, I'm sure, hopefully have changed today from this day that we're recording this. So hopefully these numbers will be more than $39.30. But go to our Indiegogo page, and you can find the link above in the or below in the comments, and we'll make sure that you can get there, make a contribution of any amount. Every dollar is important. As we raise money to make this film, we can't make a film without your contributions. So thank you so much for those of you who have already contributed to our project. So today I am bringing to you two amazing people who are involved in our first responder community. JC Ferguson from Austin, Texas, and Pam Opoka from Kansas. What city in Kansas?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Kansas City, okay. Kansas City, Missouri. So well, we just say Kansas, right? It's easier that way. So first, I want to, JC, give me your 1 minute spiel on who you are and what do you do.
All right, 1 minute. I'm watching the clock. Hey, Conrad, Pam, good to see you today. Thank you, everybody, for being here and paying attention to this important issue and giving Conrad and this First Responder Friday your attention. A little bit about myself. My name is JC Ferguson from Austin, Texas. I work for Austin-Travis County EMS, which is a standalone EMS organization, a third service EMS provider. I'm a commander in their communications division, which means I'm solely about Medicom. I'm solely about 911 call taking and dispatching. I've been an EMT for 17 years. But with Austin-Travis County for 9 years this year, and all 9 of those have been in the communications center. So within that, I supervise one of their Medcom shifts, as well as have command over the CE and training program for initial cadets and ongoing education, as well as oversee our special events and emergency response team from the communications side.
And Pam, give us a little bit of the 1 minute clip notes on who Pam is.
My name is Pam Opoka. I started my career in 911 15 years ago. Well, actually 25 years ago, but I spent 15 years under the headset. And then I worked my way through the ranks, and then I joined Mid-America Regional Council, which is a council of governments in the Kansas City, Missouri area. We manage 45 PSAPs in 2 states, in Missouri and Kansas, and there's 700 dispatchers there, and I'm in charge of all their training. I'm the training coordinator and also the peer support program planner for the 911 dispatchers and for the commanders.
Very good. So you guys are both really experienced in a variety of things, but especially in communications and in dispatching. So we're just going to have a conversation today and see where this leads us. And I know we want to talk about wellness and some of the things that you're doing with the NENA organization, the National Emergency Number Association. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Which they have so graciously endorsed our film project, and they're one of their leaders is on our advisory board for the film, and so we're thankful for that support and that knowledge base that they provide for us. So, why is wellness important for a dispatcher? Either one of you.
That's a great question, Conrad. And some of these answers can probably go to say why wellness is important to anybody, but specifically to dispatch and why wellness is important for emergency communicators is the job is unique, and there are unique stressors to dispatching communications that other responders in the first responder family, they don't have the same type. And then one of the things that I like to stress to some of our field counterparts when they're learning about communications is when the tones go off and you're responding to a call, or when your radio goes off and you're responding to an incident, your mind and your body has time to mentally prepare for that arrival. Even if it's around the corner, those seconds are still valuable for your body to prepare for that. In most communication centers, the phone doesn't even ring, it just turns on and the call is live in your ear. Even if you have the chance to pause and pick up the call, the expectations are that it's picked up within 10 seconds, right? So rarely is a responder 10 seconds from the scene that they're about to encounter. Whereas a call taker or someone working over 911, the sounds and experiences and the need to immediately be engaged in that call are instantaneous the moment the phone rings. So there's no time to prepare, right? And then when someone who's working on scene has, and I don't want to say they have time, because all types of first responders, be they firefighter, law enforcement, or EMS, makes split-second decisions while they're working. But emergency communicators also have to make those split-second decisions that not only affect the caller that they're on the line with, but is going to affect the responders that they sent to go to that scene. And they have to do that without seeing what's there, without having all of the stimuli available to perceive that. So all of those stressors mean that the most efficient way to handle this job and to be high speed, to be reactive, to be proactive, to take care of the true emergencies that need diligent, focused, they're time sensitive decisions that can actually save lives, you need to be in the most ready mental state that you can. Even physical state is helpful at that point. And so to have a ready mental state, to have a ready physical state ties into the whole concept of overall wellness, of how well are you mentally, how well are you prepared to handle the stressors of this job? Physically, how well are you to handle the longevity of sitting in a chair for 12 hours while your mind gets stressed? Can your body back that up? And so the more attention,
I interrupt. JC, you've had experience kind of on both sides of that. You've been in the field as an EMT and been taking those calls. So Pam, have you had those kind of experiences too? And what have you seen? And why are some of these unique challenges dispatchers face? Why is wellness important for a dispatcher?
Well, just to add to JC's comments about how the calls come into your headset instantaneously, those add up too, because we don't have time to take a break between each call. Like sometimes police officers or firefighters will stop at Quick Trip or whatever the gas station is that's in your area to kind of decompress from each call that they just went on. But that's not true with dispatchers, which is what adds to the accumulated stress and the compassion fatigue. And we also know that research shows us that unmanaged stress can lead to depression, cardiovascular disease, obesity, fatigue, sleep disorders, and things like that. So it is very important that we maintain our dispatchers' wellness and give them the tools that they need for the resiliency piece.
I think that I'm not in the first responder community, but I've been around enough that I kind of understand some of the interesting or unique challenges. I know as a dispatcher, you're often sitting a lot, and like you said, there's not that time for breaks. And are there challenges I know in the research study, I think that Michelle Lilly did, that there has been some knowledge of dispatchers, having trouble with weight, having trouble with those kind of things also add stress to a dispatcher, right?
They do. And also, they don't always have the best eating habits, because you're talking about shift work and overnight shifts and what's open and available drive-thrus. So there's that piece too.
Mm-hmm. And so what are some
sleep.
Other unique challenges?
Yes.
There you go. What are some other unique challenges that maybe dispatchers face that, law enforcement or fire and EMS that don't necessarily see or experience?
Well,
I think the biggest ones, go ahead, Pam, you tell them.
I was just going to say long hours, mandated overtime, but that's not really just a dispatcher issue. That's kind of first responder specific.
One of the big things that dispatchers encounter that their field counterparts don't is lack of closure. The medics get to transport patients to the hospital, and they may not know the outcome, in that moment about how that patient did, but the likelihood that they'll go back to that hospital in the same night or same day is possible. And they also have established relationships with the nurses and doctors because they usually transport to those places. So, the availability to find out how so-and-so did they make it through the night? What was the diagnosis, et cetera? Those are possible or more feasible there. Law enforcement, if we find the bad guy and he's going to jail, well, those officers wrote the arrest affidavit. Like they know that he got from point A or she got from point A to point B. Firefighters, same thing. You hear stories of a fire over the phone, but it's the ones that showed up to see what really happened. And the investigator shows up and they get details about how it started and how it spread, et cetera. Over the phone, and kind of what Pam mentioned a second ago is the lack of breaks between calls, is you may spend 3-5 minutes on average, maybe 10 minutes or longer, depending on your area, on this call, dealing with something incredibly stressful, hearing sounds in the background, forming those pictures in your head. And then when somebody shows up or you're done with the call, you disconnect and it's done. And then the next call rings and suddenly you're dealing with a whole new emergency. And it may not be later on through that shift that you even get a chance to think about what happened. And now you're dispatching for, and one of the things that's unique, at least to my agency, is the medics that we dispatch, that's my agency. And so I'm very, and our staff are connected with them and we can contact them. But a lot of dispatch centers, especially if they're consolidated, are dispatching for multiple agencies. And so those call takers and dispatchers may not have personal relationships with the field responders. They may not have a clean and cohesive way to find out what happened. And when you hear the sounds that we hear and you try as hard as you try to affect change on a 911 call, just to have it ripped away from you when somebody else gets there without knowing what happened, what led up to the call, what did they find when they got there, how did it, those things help the mind process those traumatic and stressful events. And in lack of those, your mind creates what it wants to and what it fears sometimes. And that's a unique stressor to dispatchers, is that lack of closure, that lack of follow through about what happened and what led up to that incident.
So help me understand a little bit. So in a dispatch room, and I've been in one here locally some years ago, but so as different individuals are working and taking calls, are they always working alone on that call, or is there someone else that is kind of a teammate who's helping with that call or potentially helping?
Do you want me to answer that? Since we have so many PSAPs in our region, we have some that are rural, we have some that are not so rural, and some of the rural agencies are working by themselves on one console. So no, they don't have anyone else. They're doing everything. They're taking the call, they're dispatching the fire and EMS and the police, and they're just trying to handle everything. But then like some of our larger agencies, they have like a call taker section and a dispatcher section. So those people are all working together. But again, like JC mentioned earlier, the call taker is already off handling another call while the dispatcher is doing the rest. So there's a lot of moving parts to dispatching.
For a smaller agency, that could be another stressor that it kind
Sure.
of falls on you and you're by yourself.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially for those small ones where your person that answers the phone call is the one that has to dispatch the call. So they have to talk to the hysterical caller and talk to the responders who have questions about what they're responding to, and balance their time between, two masters that need equal attention. They both need that attention equally. And that's really difficult to balance. And even the smaller ones, you have one person on shift or maybe even two, you may be solo and there may be 4 phones ringing at once. To answer your question, Conrad, there's kind of a NOMER in the 911 world, and it proves true for other agencies or other disciplines as well. But once you've seen one 911 center, you've seen one 911 center. There's all different kinds of setups that they can use to affect that mission.
Some are more advanced than others as well, right?
Right, and it comes down to how many personnel do you have available? How many positions do you have that you can staff? What's your technology capability, right? Especially the rural and smaller agencies don't have the personnel depth to have a dedicated dispatcher and a dedicated call taker. And their call volume may support that as well. And that, even when it gets busy, it's overwhelming. But when it's not busy, it doesn't make sense to have 2 or 3 people there to do those things. So it depends on the jurisdiction, the call volume size, their budget, how much personnel they have, the technology they have, et cetera. At ours, our call takers and dispatchers are separate. Mm-hmm. If you're call taking, that's all you do. And if you're dispatching, that's all you do.
And so just so I understand, so a call taker will take the call and then route it to where it needs to go to dispatch. Is that how it works?
Yeah, and that can be unique. Like, again, based on the center. For the larger and consolidated centers, they may have call takers that take all the different types of calls, but a dispatcher may only work for a single agency.
Gotcha.
And so that CAD system, or the computer-aided dispatch system that the call taker enters the call into, the dispatchers can see it, and the dispatcher whose jurisdiction that call belongs to would be responsible for sending it to the field units.
Okay. So
we're lucky in that we're single jurisdiction, so we don't have to worry about that.
So I want to ask both of you this. So when some new recruit comes in, how much training do they get in all this stuff? And then what kind of training do they have in taking care of themselves mentally or emotionally? So Pam, you want to go first?
Sure. So in our region, we have what we call a 40-hour basic, which is core competencies that you have to have within the first year of being employed, which is all classroom. But then depending on the agency, you have months and months on each shift. So like I said before, like the bigger agencies, they can afford to do that. But the smaller agencies, you might be, after your 40-hour basic in person training class, you may be sitting on the console training side by side with your trainer. So again, it just depends. It's very mixed.
Mm-hmm. And JC?
Luckily in ours, since it's just a single agency, our call takers and dispatchers, our communications medics, are sworn civil service personnel. So they have to have an EMT certification in the state of Texas to even apply to our dispatch center. Once in, they go through our cadet academy at Austin-Travis County EMS, which is 8 weeks long. And that 8 weeks is a combination of didactic classroom learning as well as hands-on simulated on the console training. After that 8 weeks, they'll spend another, on average, 3 to 5 months with a trainer on the floor on live consoles, working through the rest of their training program. And then to answer the second part of that, what training and education are they getting about their wellness and how to take care of themselves? It's unique kind of for us because our cadet academy is a stress academy, and those provide unique stressors on the cadets that are attending it. But during that first week, typically on the second or third day of that academy, they get a visit from the peer support team. And not only that, in addition to a visit from the peer support team, they're receiving anywhere from 16 to 20 additional hours on mental health training, not only for themselves, but also dealing with patients and callers, a visit from our staff psychologist, a visit from our peer support team leader, and like I said, the peer support team themselves, typically an 8-hour mental health first aid class. And while it is a stress academy, even the cadre and the training staff stress the importance to them, how important it is to take care of themselves, to sleep, to hydrate, to eat appropriate foods, not only for their physical health, but for their mental health as well. Because whether the cadet is a field cadet and going to an ambulance, or they're a communications cadet and they're coming to the dispatch center, they're going to encounter all different kinds of stress. And to be the best that they can be for themselves and for our patients, the callers to 911 and the patients that we find when we get to the scene, we want them to be at the top of their game. And the only way to get there is to look inward and see what they need to do to take care of themselves, to be there for the public.
So here's the big question. What do you guys do personally to stay healthy, to keep yourself, physically, mentally, spiritually? What do you do to take care of yourself?
I could do more. I'll be the first to admit that. But especially since we are working from home a lot now with this COVID thing going on. But I do like to do meditation and mindfulness stuff on an app. And then I do make sure that I drink a lot of water. I'm able to eat healthier now, and I try to make sure that I do. I take the dog for a walk. But of course, there's all kinds of devices that people can use, like smartwatches and apps and things. There's always an app for that, right? So depending on whatever it is that you're into, I'm sure there is an app for it that can tell you when you're not doing it enough or when you need to do it more. So.
Yeah, I don't have the nice Apple Watch my wife on, and she's always like, okay, have I filled my circles today? So, but and she's a school administrator, so when she's at school and pre-COVID, she always got her circles in because she was going up and down stairs and walking hallways, but now it's more of a challenge, and so JC, what do you do? What's your routine?
I'll start a few years back. At the beginning of my dispatch career, I went straight to night shift. And during that night shift, the way I coped with the difficulty was with release. And that was with my friends, right? We still exercise. We had a group that would, on our last day of a few days in a row, go to Town Lake here in Austin, and we would run in the mornings after a night shift. But that would typically turn also into breakfast. And then after breakfast, we were thirsty. And so we'd go next door to the brew pub barbecue place, and we'd end up, staying up. We'd be up for that whole 24 hours almost.
So it's kind of a lack of sleep that you were experiencing there.
Yeah. And after a few years of that, I got dumber. I got slow. My reaction speed, my agility, my mental agility, I could feel myself not being able to react and respond as fast because of that chronic fatigue. I got a chance to spend some time, a few years, in an administrative position at our training academy. And now I'm back on shift work and I'm back on nights. So this time around, instead of falling into those habits, sleep has been a priority. And I know that sleep and nutrition and exercise are difficult things for dispatchers, but what I find most important to my wellness and what I have committed to myself and my family to do is to make sure I get enough sleep. And yes, that takes time away from things I want to do. It takes time away from family. But if I'm not rested, then I'm also not the same person. I need time to exercise. And when I carve that time out, I have to make sure that I use that time appropriately and efficiently. So I get a lot out of that workout, that dopamine release, endorphins from moving the body and exercising, getting the heart rate up. I find a lot of value out of that. So I make sure that I've got time for that. And then that I'm treating my body right by, eating as clean as I can. All that being said, one of the other things I also do is, while all of those is kind of moderate and in moderation, there needs to be some type of release as well, be that a really difficult, hard, hot workout that just makes you want to vomit, which doesn't sound good. But when it's over and you've recovered a little bit, the body feels great. But also getting together with friends and having a meal or going out for an activity, seeing a movie or to the skate rink or who knows, whatever is it locally available, that is huge as well. And not just my work friends, but my non-work friends as well.
I was going to ask that. How important is that to have friends outside of your work circles?
I think it's
really important. Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely. I have very close colleagues at work, and I have very close friends at work too. And they're valuable to me. But the value of having a friend that doesn't go through the same things that you go through, that you can share some of the experiences you have, but also share from them, receive from them experiences that are non-career related. When it's invaluable, and as is the disconnection from the work. That's part of overall being well, is the ability to walk away from it and leave it at work. But when some of those images and those sights and those sounds of the traumatic events, and then the reminder of the chronic stress because manager so-and-so is up my whatever again about XYZ, I didn't get my TPS reports done in time, or this is the third time I've been hauled into the division chief's office for XYZ, whatever, because work is stressful. When you spend those time with your work people, what do you talk about? You talk about work. Mm-hmm. And if work is stressful, then now your off time is stressful because you spent it talking about the stressful work. So if you can do that with your friends and not talk about work with your work friends, great. But most of us need somebody that's
going to be talking about work.
Not going to engage like that, right? I like when we have a group of us together and they start talking about work stuff when we're not on duty. And you guys got 45 seconds to wrap this conversation up, and then I'm leaving. I'm going to go somewhere else. I need to not have this in my head. I want something else in my head.
You know, I get that. I'm self-employed, so I guess I have to talk to myself if I want to talk about work. But my wife, when we go out to a teacher thing or a school function or hanging out with other teacher friends, you know, it's like they go right to talking about school, and I kind of chuckle. It's like, and I also have some friends that are married to other educators, and we kind of like have this thing of, yeah, they're talking their school stuff again, you know? And so that can be challenging for all of us, no matter what occupation we're in, is to leave the stressor that produces, leave it behind and engage in conversations that are unwork related, unrelated to work. So I think that's important.
It helps keep your mind fresh on things, on current events that are not emergency incident related.
Yeah.
Current events that are not public policy related that affect your job, that everybody has opinions about, to focus on other things. It's healthy for the brain, because when your brain's not focused on those stressors, it still thinks about them and it still processes them, but being quiet about it allows it to do it in the background, so that you can be more resilient and cope with those either acute stressors and then the long-term stress as well. So, talking about that stuff is important, but it's important to do it in the right setting and with the right type of person that's not going to cause that cumulative stress to be aggravating and to come back and bite you in some way in the future.
Yeah. So you guys are both part of a program through NENA. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is, what you're working on, and what that involves?
Yeah,
sure.
I'll let Pam tell us a little bit.
Okay. So through the Wellness Committee is the peer support work group, and that's where we are both co-chairs. And so our goal is to provide an information document that can be used nationwide or worldwide even, that will give the very basics on how to create your own peer support team within your own PSAP, no matter what your budget level is.
So how long have you guys been working on this together?
How long has it been? A few months, maybe. Kind of move into a year, maybe.
We're pretty close to a year now. I think it was summer of last year that the Wellness Committee was getting its momentum going, and made the decisions to create different work groups of things that needed to be done. So the identified need of a document or a way to allow users, readers rather, to create their own peer support team wherever they are, was identified, and they formed the work group up. I think we officially started getting working in November of last year, but it was in the works well before that.
So how does peer support work in the dispatch world?
Well, what I feel like makes it unique is that dispatchers, the peers do each other's jobs, right? So you always have better knowledge with other dispatchers when you're in the PSAP together. But what makes 911 unique is that you're always in a closed environment. You can't just leave. So it's kind of nice when you can just turn to your partner and say, that was a really bad call. I need to talk about that for a minute. Or say, I need to get up and take just a minute. I just need a minute. It's okay not to feel okay. And that's part of the stigma that we're working on to change in the 911 PSAP world. And actually with all first responders, especially with your movie, Conrad. But it's okay not to feel okay when you hear things that is not normal. Normal people don't hear the things that we hear or see the things that we see or deal with the things that we deal with, especially when it's coming in quickly. It's like JC says, it's instantaneous all the time, and it just builds and builds and builds. And so that's one of the reasons why peer support within the comm center is nice, because it's immediate and it's also confidential and non-judgmental.
So is there like a training program that is available for people to become a peer supporter? I'm not sure what the title is for that person, but
there are many, and that's one of the unique challenges that we're facing kind of in our work group. Is we'll be providing suggestions and a framework for somebody to design, implement, and run a peer support program. But it's not a complete, if you use this, you are a now peer supporter. So there are many programs out there. There's a lot of vendors, contract agencies, people, and then also groups, associations rather, that provide training about peer support or how to deliver peer support. So there's many different modalities or ways to get about it. Some of them offer certificates that say that person now a certified peer supporter. What we don't have is a single nationwide first responder or even 911 recognized agency or provider of peer support training. So there's many out there that do it. Most of them are very good, very thorough. But there's more than one way to skin that cat. There's lots of ways to go find that training, and the way that it's delivered and what's contained in it is also something that an agency or an individual who is untrained in peer support can collect that type of curriculum and have it delivered even without having to go to a vendor or supplier of that. While that would be much easier, it's much more of a packaged deal and much logistically simpler to accomplish. It is possible to put the pieces together, throughout members of the community, be they mental health professionals, social workers, hospital staff, crisis training, et cetera. There's many different facets to what a peer supporter needs to learn or be educated about that can be pulled from different sources in their communities.
Mm-hmm. Have either one of you, either yourself personally or someone on your team, where you can say, wow, we're so glad peer support was here for myself or for that person? Any stories like that you might want to share?
Well, we can't really share the specifics on the stories because they're confidential, but yes, I hear all the time how much it has helped them and that they're so grateful that the resource is there for them, no matter what, whether that be a referral to their EAP because they didn't even realize they weren't thinking clearly that, I can use my insurance for my EAP, or I can provide them with educational materials and resources or family support, things that they may not even know exist. And sometimes the peer supporter can just help kind of change the lens on how they're feeling and kind of point them in a more positive direction.
Yeah, and it's almost leading by example in some respects. A lot of the positive feedback that we receive in our peer support program is without hearing from this peer who had also had a similar issue or had similar experience with the type of issue, rather than an administrator or a therapist, a counselor, a judge, a family friend, a pastor, anybody else tells them, you need to go talk to somebody and deal with this in this way. Man, we're first responders. Our type A-ness doesn't go well with someone telling us what we need to do and how we need to do it. we know how to take care of ourselves and how to get from point A to point B. But when someone who's in a similar position to us says, and I've been down this path before, or I've seen people go down this path before, and if we go this direction, there's some good things there. In fact, I have some people that would be willing to talk to you about what it's like to go this direction and tell you their experience. Conrad, you have some of them on your trailer sharing their experiences, moving through their mental health journey. And they may or may not have had contact with peer support, but they sought out help. And, like I said, one of the most positive feedbacks that we get is that I would have never gone to the therapist. I would have never gone to so-and-so's office. I would never have tried EMDR therapy unless so-and-so hadn't spoken up and suggested it, or I saw how much better they are doing after having gone through their journey, that now I feel like, well, maybe that's something I can do. Maybe that's something I can benefit from. And at its core, that's really what peer support is us looking out for each other, providing those good examples, highlighting those good outcomes, and educating each other about what the pitfalls of allowing this stress to build up. It doesn't have to be work stress, but the stress in general, the traumatic events to build up without being processed, without being coped with appropriately, and highlighting what happens when your resiliency gets down to nil.
Do you think an agency who has an active, proactive peer support group, it makes it even easier for anyone to raise their hand and say, I'm in trouble? Just the fact that it's there, that it exists, and that maybe they're talking about it in meetings, or just that fact makes it an easier step to take that first step to get help or to ask for help.
I think so. We're actually working with, and I know that she's your 911 friend too, Dr. Michelle Lilly has done studies on that, and she's reported that 18 to 24% of dispatchers suffer from PTSD. And so I feel like just our personnel that knows that they have this resource available to them confidentially, I think that it hopefully will start bringing those numbers down, especially like with your film showing that this does exist and it is a problem and we have to do something to help.
What's involved in starting a peer support, say an agency in Colby, Kansas is needing to start a peer support group? What can they do?
This is what we're working on. Do you want to handle that, JC?
Yeah, absolutely. There's many different ways to go about it. And it depends on who's asking also about what steps are necessary. If it's a frontline staff dispatcher, call taker that's wanting to provide that in their area and have it for their personnel, then it's a lot more grassroots. They have to garner support from their management. They have to garner support from their administrators, whoever signs the paychecks and writes the budgets and creates the groups. They need to garner support from there. And so their job at that point is to take them a package that those administrators and managers can't say no to. And that means explaining how much it's going to cost, how much time it's going to take. This is everything I need. It's all right here. You can read it. And it comes with research. It comes with information to back up why it's important, why it's beneficial, how it's going to help us in the long run, and how you just can't say no to this. As a administrator, if you're the one going, I agree that we need this, and I'm ready to sign it into policy and make it happen, then it's a lot shorter journey. You just need you need the policies that define your team. You need to find a way to recruit and select them. You need to train them, and then you need to turn your ears off and let them go work confidentially.
How do you bring that? How do you announce that to the whole group? I don't know how many you have in your agency, but how do you bring them together and say, okay, this is what we're doing, this is what we're rolling out, and how do you convince them to say, you know what, I think that's a good idea?
There's a couple different ways. If the beginning part in convincing the management is thinking from an elected official, thinking from a directorship type position, trying to put yourself in their shoes and have some empathy for that position. You don't want problems brought to you. You want solutions to those problems brought to you. So it's easy to walk into the office and say, our staff are stressed. We are incurring this many hours of sick time use. We're incurring this much overtime because people aren't showing up to work. You know, we've had this many, you know, personnel type issues or something that we're trying to solve that we can tie to traumatic stress, acute stress, or cumulative stress, burnout, that we can help with the peer program. They may easily agree to that, but just bringing that problem needs to also come with the solution of here's how we want to combat that. Here's how we can take those numbers down and quantitatively say we're going to try to reduce sick time use, reduce, you know, personal leave use for acute situations, and allow our staff to be more resilient, cope faster with traumatic situations. So that means less burnout, higher retention, which means less training costs, you know, less turnover in those early years, targeting when people are leaving most frequently. Like we look at our tenured staff, when are people leaving and at what years of service, and why are they leaving during those years? And that's something that can be targeted. So you take to them, this is what we're going to accomplish. This is how we're going to do it. This is why it's important using, like I said, research and data, if at all possible. And that's something that we're going to be helping to provide in our document is a library of resources that can be used to say, now it's actually been studied that implementation of a peer support program can qualitatively save money or save hours or even save lives, save retention rates, all these things. Improving morale is a tough number to take after because those are just survey returns, right?
When you have numbers that you can bring and say, hey, this will do this, I think that makes it a compelling argument for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you say this is going to cost us X amount to do it, but this is how much we spend already, and this is how much we think we can save in a conservative, you know, outlook, then it's a no-brainer. And management, like those elected officials or whoever's, you know, responsible in that jurisdiction for creating something like this, doesn't have a lot of wiggle room to say no.
So much cheaper to keep people healthy than it is to keep retraining new people, right?
Yeah, it really is. And that's a tough investment to make. That's a tough argument to sell because you have to prove it. And even if the numbers exist, you know, locally, you still have to prove that concept and you have to back it up. But that's one of the positive changes that comes with implementing a peer support program is if your morale is in the gutter and the management says it doesn't matter what we do, we're always going to have this revolving door of people because all they want is money or time off and things that we can't give them. Well, give us this chance, right? Here's, you know, invest in this time and let us see, because, you know, true grassroots peer support and peer-to-peer support that improves that morale allows people to trust each other, to trust that their stressors can be processed with each other or referred to someone else if it needs to, makes, and the positive outcomes that people see, it's contagious. It's a culture, and creating a culture of acceptance, creating a culture of it's okay to say that this job sucks sometimes. It's okay to say that it gets to me. It's okay to say that I need a little bit of time away from this. Lets people know that they can do this long term, because what it seems like a lot of people experience is they do it for long enough and finally go, I can't do this anymore. And then someone who's well-liked, who had a good personality, who was, you know, a fantastic medic, firefighter, law officer, or dispatcher, you know, a good mentor, finally burns out and leaves. That example now shines down on all of the newer, younger dispatchers, first responders, and goes, man, if he didn't make it, there's no way. And I'm going to spend all of my free time finding my next job. All my energy is going to be spent on what's next rather than how do I make this a career? And if the only people we see retiring out of this career are crusty, we are happy to see them go, right? We throw them a party, but that's because we're happy to see you go, not because you gave us 30 years, right? We want to see people reach that 30 years or whatever it is, for your organization in a good position, still as a mentor, still well-respected, still looked up to, so that someone can go, oh, well, maybe I can do that too if I take care of myself and make these moves.
Yeah. I think I kind of understand what the benefits are for this. What should people not expect from a peer support, Pam? What are those things that, that peer support is not?
There's two things that I wanted to talk about with this. One is they should not expect professional level help because it isn't. Our peer supporters are not psychologists, clinicians, or chaplains. They're just peers that are here to help you. They are trained, but they're not professionals. And then the second piece to this is a little bit on the negative side, but it's not always going to have immediate acceptance by all the PSAP personnel because it takes a while to build up the trust and to get rid of the stigma that's associated with getting help for a lot of people, even though we feel that is changing in a positive way. But that's something that we're working on. And I feel like it is going in a more positive direction, but that's what it isn't. It's not going to be immediate, and it's not a professional level help.
So what if you have a crusty old boss who's like, it's just, suck it up. You guys need to get with the program here. What do you say to someone like that?
Well, I've had to deal with that. What I have found is that if you give them a special project and give them a purpose, then one, they're not going to be gossipy anymore, and they're not going to be the negative Nelly in the comm center, because I know that we all have one. But I feel like if you give them a different purpose, then they will redirect their vision, and we'll still be able to provide our communities the help that they expect whenever 911 is answered and they're needing help.
So kind of changing direction here. So we've been talking about some heavy stuff. What's something that in the 911 world that makes you laugh?
Well, we all have the callers.
Yeah. They provide a unique perspective into your community. And even though there are some of them out there that you don't want to deal with, and there's some that are not enjoyable, there are always a handful, or one or two at least, that when this person's calling that it's something good. We had a frequent caller who hung around a certain part of town and called himself by a superhero name. And so when you asked him what his name was, he would tell you it was the superhero. And there was one November, I believe it was 2012. It was an election year. He called me late in November to ask what I was doing for Thanksgiving, because he was happy I was spending it with my family. But he called the second week in November to ask me who won the election. He just wanted to chat. Well, he still needed an ambulance. So, we're still sending him an ambulance. But in the meantime of that triage, he just wanted to chit chat. And, everyone in the center had spoken to this guy so often that he felt, connected and felt safe enough to make small talk about the election for one, and then go, man, I bet you guys are, spending time with your family on Thanksgiving. Well, no, we're going to be here this year. It's like, oh, that's too bad. Well, I'll call back on Thanksgiving and wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Just little things like that you don't expect, and small connections with positive people that impact your day in that certain way. And not as a funny thing, but one of my other favorite things as taking calls is affecting change, because we're only on that call for so long. It is a very short amount of time. And if in that short amount of time, I can get a thank you or a I appreciate you, or the golden ticket is a I'm sorry, especially for harsh words or bad attitudes or something that's contentious during that call. In those short minutes, we modified behavior. Like we won a heart or a mind, and then those little things, those are the nuggets that, man, that was cool. That was good.
And Pam, what about you?
Well, mine is I love to do the education piece at the elementary schools with the little kids. They love Cell Phone Sally. They love the little swag bags that you give them, the pencils and all that sticker stuff. And I like to educate them on how to call 911 and why. And we're just regular people on the other end, so it's not so scary. So those are some things that I like to do.
I'm glad that works for you, Pam. I'm 6'4", so if I put on the Cell Phone Sally costume and walk into a cafeteria, there are kids running out of that. They're terrified.
You know, we had just recently, my wife and I were on a trip, and we were down in Florida, and it was rainy afternoon, and we had observed a really bad accident back in Alabama, and then we had a semi truck had a blowout right next to us that scared the living bejeebers out of us. And then right in front of us, this motorcycle comes flying by us. It was raining. We were going about 80 miles an hour on the highway. It was raining. And this motorcycle comes flying by. And my wife said, oh my goodness, that guy is going to have an accident. And 2 seconds later, wiggled, flipped it. Bodies went flying in the middle of the, 6-lane interstate. And so my wife, I said, you call 911. I jumped out to try to help. And my wife said that 911 dispatcher or call receiver was just patient, because my wife had no idea where we were, didn't know what mile marker we were at, knew we were in front of a rest stop. But she said this dispatcher was just calm and relaxed and just walked through the whole scenario. And it was really a refreshing thing for my wife to hear that, to have this calm voice on the other end, that was taking that call and trying to figure out. And then I think they ended up triangulating where our phone was and using the GPS there to pinpoint where we were. But it was, again, one of those situations where you want someone healthy on that other line. When I call 911, I want someone healthy there that is taking care of themselves and can help me in my emergency to figure out the problem and figure out the solution to that problem.
Yeah, what a fantastic experience to be in a moment of emergency or crisis, seeing that in front of you, and then to pick up somebody who acknowledges and can step into those shoes and go, I understand why you may be talking fast or aggravated or whatever emotions being displayed at the time, and portray an image of, I can handle whatever it is that you're having. You just talk to me and we'll take care of it, rather than you shouldn't be having any emotions. You're going to have to do it my way if you want any of my help. That type of more negative front that makes somebody who, I don't know how many times your wife has ever called 911, but for most people, it's right. It's only once, if not a small handful of times, that the last thing you want is someone going, oh, I'm never calling 911 again.
And no, the situation too is my wife, even for days later, she was like, every time I close my eyes, all I see is those bodies flying through the air. Unfortunately, the people walked away from it. I mean, they could have been killed. It could have been very, very bad.
Yeah, that's lucky.
Walk away from it. I was a little perturbed with the guy, because he was more concerned about his bike than the girl that he had with him. But this, for my wife's sake, this dispatcher, this call receiver, was really calm and just helped her calm down to a point where she was able to articulate more details about the scene that she was seeing. And it was just a great experience.
It is. That's a good point for us to remember too, that those positive outcomes and the way that though our callers process the emergencies that they see, because they're experiencing stress too. And if we add to that, they may see the images of that scene for weeks or months to come, and they may also hear how we treated them over the phone. That compounds that. But if we treat them respectfully, even if we have to be assertive and we have to move quickly through information because there's work to be done, like providing instructions that need to happen, that can still be done compassionately, even though assertively. If we can do that and provide that positive reflection on that, then that's one less thing that they have to deal with. And it's likely one less thing that we have to deal with, because we may have heard the screams or the sounds and sparks of the fire or whatever it is that was there. But if we also don't have to deal with somebody who's cursing us out in that moment, then that reduces the number of things that we're having to process. And it relates back to the traumatic nature of the scene itself, not the compounding trauma of the scene and not being able to break through to a caller in crisis who's being, if not just unhelpful, also abusive towards the call taker.
Right. And I'm sure you guys have experienced the whole gamut of of things from one side to the other. I'm sure you could tell stories for days. So
not appropriate for the public audience.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to kind of wrap up here a little bit. So tell us a little bit about with this NENA program that's rolling out. When can people access that? Where can they get it? Some information on that.
Okay, so we're not sure when we're going to be finished with the document exactly. We're 75% done. Hopefully that'll be done by Q4 of this year. We're not sure how NENA is going to go about rolling it out. It was supposed to be done at a conference, however, COVID. So we're not sure, but it's coming. In the meantime, NENA has a wellness continuum microsite on their website, and you can reach that at nena.org, NENA.org. Then you click on programs and then wellness continuum, and there's plenty of resources like EAP, suicide, sleep. There's TED Talks. There's all kinds of things for you to find. There you go. Yep. So even if you scroll down, you'll see some of them.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're pretty excited about that.
Very cool.
Resource that's now available. It's just so important that we provide happier and healthier dispatchers and invest in our human capital while we can, especially since Next Generation 911 is coming, and that will be delivering multimedia, including pictures and videos to our dispatchers who are only used to hearing it now.
That'll change things.
Yeah, so your documentary is very timely for us in the 911 world, and we really appreciate you and your staff doing that and bringing light to it.
Well, I'm excited to be working with some great organizations like NENA and others to bring this story. I think it's the general public needs to know that we have amazing first responders, from the call takers to the, boots on the ground out there arriving on the scene. We have amazing people who are doing amazing things and working through difficult situations that they've experienced over the years and still making good choices. And there are law enforcement officers who are making good choices, making good decisions. And there are great people out there. And that's why I want to make this film. I want to help the general public to understand that and to raise support for all of all first responder organizations. And so I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys. I know JC, I think you're on vacation this week or something, so you stepped in. So thank you for putting on the uniform and being on for this. So I really appreciate it. And Pam,
absolutely.
So any final words from both of you?
Yeah, I'm happy to promote the message, and a big thank you to you, Conrad. One of the things I like the most in promoting this message too is that you use that term first responder seamlessly to include those call takers and dispatchers who are truly first responders as well, in addition to our law enforcement partners, our firefighter partners, our paramedic EMT partners who are responding in the field, that behind the headset, when that 911 call or that emergency initiates, there's a first responder as well. So thank you for continuing that message for us. And a big thanks to my colleague Pam here for all of her time and attention in bringing this message out and the work. It's it's going to be a very substantial thing that we're able to produce when it does come out, and hopefully it reaches as far and wide as we would like it to. And that's impossible to do without a teammate, without a team, the entire work group that we have working for us. A big thank you to all of them as well, because it could not be done without that group.
So Pam, any final words for today?
Well, I appreciate our team as well, and I appreciate NENA for pushing out the wellness continuum and realizing that optimizing performance optimizes well-being. And I feel like our dispatchers are so important. And I just really appreciate NENA, our team, and you for making this message so known. So thank you.
Sure. Well, thank both of you for coming on today. This is First Responder Friday, and you guys hang on for just a second. I'm going to sign off here. So again, my name is Conrad Weaver. If you want more information about our film, you can go to ptsd911movie.com, or you can go straight to our Indiegogo page. I'll provide the link in the comments. Thank you for watching today. This has been First Responder Friday, recorded live here on Facebook and on Twitter. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next week for another fascinating interview on First Responder Friday. You all take care.